As a child and a youth, I was nurtured in a Christian home full of love and security. From my earliest days, I received guidance and discipline based on biblical principles. I grew up in this community as a member and regular attender of the Liberty Christian Church, just a stone's throw from here. My parents subscribed to Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. I have memories of Sunday school and Bible school as far back as kindergarten and first grade. In fact, I attended kindergarten in this very church building, probably about where Jason's office is right now. I believe that whole complex was in that corner for a year or two. My testimony is not a dramatic conversion, but rather a hand-me-down religion of faith, which I was blessed with by God and my heritage. I was baptized as a youth in the Liberty Christian Church. In that church, at the age of 11 or 12, you attend a series of baptism classes, at the conclusion of which you were baptized by immersion during a worship service. I felt like in order to be baptized, I should have a tangible, personal experience with Jesus Christ, whether that be visually see Him, audibly hear Him, physically feel His hand upon me. I didn't know what my personal experience would be, but I was seriously paying attention to getting it. Remember, I was 11 or 12. Well, after completing 4 to 8 weeks of classes, it was time for my friends and me to be baptized. The rest of my classmates seemed to have gotten it, made their professions of faith, and got baptized with much joy, celebration of the church and their families. I, on the other hand, was confused and embarrassed. I knew in my head I wanted to be a Christian and lead a Christian life. But my heart still had not spoken to me as I thought it should. For some reason, it was not time for me to be baptized, so I decided to continue waiting for an experiential sign from Jesus Christ. I repeated those baptismal classes the next year with a group of kids all younger than me. Although the sense of void remained, I still not had had that sought-after personal experience with Jesus Christ. I went ahead with my profession of faith and got baptized. The thought of going through baptism class a third time, yet even younger kids who would inevitably get it, while I might not, again, was just too much weight for 13-year-old me. There I was with 2 rounds of baptismal classes under my belt, having announced my profession of faith and getting baptized, but still not finding God. On the handout sheet on your table, if you will notice, you might pass them around and kind of be looking at them. I ask for you to think about when you started putting away childish things. 1 Corinthians 13:11 says, when I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish things. So when you ponder when that happened for you, I can tell you the exact day and almost down to the hour. I started putting away childish things. It was a usual Saturday night when I went to bed, anticipating the excitement and fun of my youngest brother's 8th birthday party the next day. The next morning I was awakened by my father. I could tell before he spoke something was terribly wrong. A couple of weeks before my 15th birthday, I went to bed as a happy-go-lucky child with not a care in the world. When I awoke, I no longer had a mother. She had died very unexpectedly of a heart attack during the night in the bedroom next to mine at the very young age of 35. She was younger than either of my children now, and she's only half of my current age. She only got to live half the life that I've been blessed to live. We would miss sharing baptisms, Eagle Scout ceremonies, high school and college graduations, weddings, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. I was crushed and numb. With two younger brothers and a grieving father, it felt like I needed to start putting away childish things. On the day my mother died, February 8, 1970, I stopped being a child and became an adult. As things tend to do, time marched on and we began to adapt to life without our cherished mother and wife. We appreciated and felt the care and love of our family and friends. Still, it was sad and lonely time for each of us and in our own ways, especially in the stillness of our beds at night. For weeks and months thereafter, I went through a period of intense introspection and maturity, trying to find God still. On a lighter note, my brothers still chide me to this day. They didn't know hot dogs could be fixed so many ways. You could have them on a bun. You could mix them in pork and beans. You could have them with macaroni and cheese. You could have them with chili on top. You could have them with sauerkraut. And for dessert, there was the ever-present instant cheesecakes I mastered that some of you may have bravely eaten this evening. This is the exact thing that we would have on a regular basis as I fixed the evening meals. A couple of months later, I was on a weekend trip with our next door neighbor and several other families that made an annual event of camping together. We were in the Ozarks at Alley Springs State Park, canoeing on the Jacks Fork and Current Rivers. This is one of the most beautiful forest and riverway areas in the United States. So special that the National Park Service oversees 80,000 acres around these two rivers, designating it as the Ozark National Scenic Riverways, established for the preservation of a wild river system. If you've not been there, you really need to go there. On that Easter Sunday, 7 weeks to the day after my mother died, all of us hiked up about half a mile up a bluff that overlooked the natural spring, Alley Spring, for the purposes of having a church service. The setting was majestic. So get this in kind of your mind's eye. 100 feet or so directly below our bluff perch was the spring, bubbling water forming a pond or a lake about 150 to 200 feet in diameter and 150 feet deep, connected to a groundwater conduit over 3,000 feet underground. Every day, over 80 million gallons of limestone and dolomite purified water pours out of the earth at a year-round temperature of 57 degrees. Just to get your head around, you're talking to me, you got to talk numbers a little bit. To get your head around 80 million gallons, that would be enough water for every house in the city of Liberty, 80 million gallons of water a day. That would be enough for every household in the city of Liberty to fill and drain a bathtub 100 to 150 times every day. It's a lot of water.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's physically possible.
Wow.
The water is so pristine you can see all the way to the bottom, all the way to that 150-foot bottom. The water's indescribable hues of blue and green that line the lake in a mesmerizing beauty. A picturesque old red mill built in the 1800s for grinding grain stands venerably on the shore of that lake. The sight is beyond description. No painting, picture, or video could possibly capture the grandeur of this heavenly creation. So back to our group. So we hiked up the bluff. For the service, we fashioned a cross out of tree limbs and rope. We sang a few familiar hymns from memory and heard words from one of the sage adults in our group. For reasons I don't know to this day, when the adult finished, they asked me to say a few words to the group. They said, "Just whatever's on your heart." My normal reaction would be to shyly decline, but a spirit within my chest urged me to step forward. As I started to speak, I looked up from my shoes and began looking into the faces of those gathered with me. Some were familiar and some were not. Then, to my total amazement, there was Jesus Christ looking back at me. Through their eyes, I felt a love, a serenity, and peace I'd never felt before. It reminds me of the refrain, turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. When I hear these wonderful words, and surprisingly, it was in this past church service that we just sang this song Sunday. The miracle for me is not looking in Jesus' face. No, it's the very personal connection of knowing God is looking back at me through the eyes of those people. Through them, he is easing my worldly burdens with love, care, and certainly grace. You see, for me, the personal presence of Jesus Christ that day filled the void I'd been feeling since that first baptism class 3 years earlier. God was there with me. He was there with us. He came into my heart at that place, giving me strength and faith I lean on every day. I don't remember what happened after that. Did I cry? Did I finish speaking? Did I just stop? None of that really mattered because I'd found Jesus Christ that day. March 29th, 1970. Easter Sunday, I'd had my own divine revelation and confirmation of Jesus Christ. A very personal transfiguration experience. I had found God. My longing to find God was no more. After my epiphany that day, I began to realize I had overlooked Christ in my life for years. I'd been blessed throughout my young life, but was not quite mature enough to realize I was looking in Jesus' face regularly. He had always been there in the soul and faces of my parents, grandparents, teachers, scout leaders, even my younger brothers, and my friends. On those sheets, I included a few Bible verses I thought might be relevant. Hebrews 12:2, fixing our eyes upon Jesus. Matthew 6:22, the light of the body is the eye. Matthew 25:40, verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you have done unto the least of my brethren, you have done also unto me. And then 2 Corinthians 13:5. The Apostle Paul asked the Corinthians, do you not realize that Christ Jesus is in you? I believe the Bible is saying you can see Jesus in others who show love, kindness, and mercy. I don't think Christ is outside of us as some kind of a helper in our time of need. Rather, I believe he actually lives in us and those around us and is with us all of the time. Finding God now for me is as close as looking in the face of those around. And when you least expect it, you realize you're looking in the face of God. So you might be thinking of some instances when you've had that feeling. I'll give you a few that have occurred to me, and there are so many more, but these are just some examples. A pretty girl from this church befriended me shortly after my mother's death. She was very popular in all of the activities, pom-pom girl, student council officer, a good student. We actually met in the Honor Pass lounge. She was quite something. I, on the other hand, was somewhat shy and awkward, especially with girls. My first date was a girl last boy, Sadie Hawkins dance. And I was a bit of a nerd. I carried a briefcase around high school. I later discovered her father had died quite unexpectedly when she was only 10. We began dating, and by the grace of God, she's now my best friend, my wife, the mother of our children, and my love. I could not possibly tell you the number of times looking in her face, I felt Jesus looking back in love. My father ultimately remarried a wonderful woman with 2 sons and a daughter. Finding God in that new family was a regular occurrence. We became and still are a real-life Brady bunch that never uses the prefix step when referring to one another. Our babies' searching eyes locked on my face as I carried each of them from the operating room after a cesarean section procedure, walking them down long hallways to the hospital nursery. There was no overlooking God in those moments. I knew I was looking in Jesus' face, full of splendor and beauty in each of those babies. Now they are our best friends, and we continue to find God in each of them in so many ways. A young couple getting married in this church. Her face was beaming, and she was almost giddy as they exchanged wedding vows. Whenever I see her now, she's still a member of this church. Whenever I see her now with her husband and children, I still see that love of God. Our grandsons bring a renewed purpose and enjoyment every day. The older one is caring and so sensitive to the needs of others. Calvin. The younger one has a keen sense of humor. You've heard him cackle already. Yeah. And he also has the uncanny ability to smile through his eyes. He has since he was born. Every time with them is a thankful moment of looking in Jesus' face. A child singing in choir upstairs in worship. This happened over Christmas time. Her face absolutely glowing with happiness and pride, despite the many health challenges she has faced in her young life. I knew I was looking in the face of God's grace and glory. The stalwart saints staring from photos on memorial service programs. I thought I had one here. I just happen to have Bruce Hebner's, but only because that's the last one in my pile. Those pictures oftentimes cause me to look in Jesus' face as I'm looking at them and silently whisper, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Matthew 25:21. There are many of you here tonight that I found myself looking in Jesus' face as we've shared this earthly pilgrimage through the years. I see the love and caring in your faces today, much as I did on that Easter morning in 1970. I stand here in awe of all of you as servants of Christ Jesus. My hope is that tonight or in the coming days, you ponder how you have or are finding God in the faces of other persons, and knowing in your heart you have or are truly looking in Jesus' face. Fortunately for me, time does not allow us to explore our relationship with those we disagree. The current environment poses a conundrum that challenges me every minute of every day. Maybe someone wiser and more patient than me can help us sort out finding God in those faces. My life has truly been blessed. I'm so thankful for the shepherding of this congregation and the fellowship of this church that has inspired my spiritual growth and pilgrimage. To that I say a hearty thanks be to God. I appreciate your patience and attention as I took you through a testimony. We have a little bit of time. I don't know if there's some things that any of you might want to share, whether it's something you remember in particular, something I've said that hit a chord.
I just might comment that when we started dating, I was a year older than him, and back then that just wasn't quite that all the way. Are you still a year old?
I thought we get caught up and passed
Lisbon, I just wanna say, that was beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it reminds me of the power of a testimony. And we don't do that as much as we did in my upbringing in the olden days, when we would have testimony on Sunday night, you know, and if you felt so led, then you would stand up and share. And I just think there's nothing more authentic, and moving than that, so thank you.
Obviously, I prayed about it a lot. This is
We
only,
ended
this
up
is
at
the
this
second time
church.
and probably the last time.